Why is healthcare so far behind in moving to cloud-based imaging? Well, it turns out that's the wrong question to be asking. And my next guest is going to set the record straight. You're about to watch my conversation with Monique Rasband. She is the Vice President of Strategy and Research for Imaging and Oncology at KLAS Research. KLAS just released their 2025 Enterprise Imaging Report, and I wanted to dive deeper into the results because there was one that I was really surprised at, and that is that the number of providers who are thinking about switching to a new solution was way higher than I thought. Oh, and stick around for Monique's recommendation on how imaging vendors can stay on top of the market. Let's get to it. Monique, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it. Obviously excited to talk about imaging.
Yeah, I mean it's fun that both of us are so excited about imaging, and KLAS Research, of course, just came out with their Enterprise Imaging 2025 report, which is why I wanted to have you, one of the authors, come on the program today. But maybe before we get there, Monique, can you just quickly introduce yourself and your role at KLAS?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always say, and I stick to it, that I have the best role at KLAS. So I'm our vice president over imaging, and I very lucky get to work global. So talk with all of our customers globally, our providers globally, and get to talk about all the cool things happening. So obviously it gets a little different for each region. And enterprise imaging has really been heating up in the US. So we have expanded. We're going above and beyond PACS, which is really fun to see not only the expansion, but just the providers that are pressing the envelope and all the cool things that they're MacGyvering in enterprise imaging. Really fun times.
So, Monique, let's start there with that first question, because how do you define enterprise imaging? Like, what is that, and what is it supposed to achieve for a provider?
Yeah, great question. So I get off the hook with this question. We let our providers define it. And gosh, handful of years ago, we had this idea of enterprise imaging. We heard from many people in the market what enterprise imaging was, how it's transforming. But the definition is definitely different depending on the person, depending on your role, in addition to the organization. We're not all shapes and sizes. What the majority of people talk about enterprise imaging, a couple of things. Obviously, imaging moving across the enterprise. And again, that's going to be very different for a large RAD group. It will be different for an academic, different from an IDN, and different for some of these standalone imaging centers, which we still see some of those today. But that's the first piece, is literally being able to move that across the enterprise. And then it dials one step deeper for those organizations that want to put all of the images in one spot. So a provider very well explained it to me that imagine you have the basement for imaging, and that basement is a lot more open architecture, vendor neutral, that's vendor neutral archive, and you're able to bring in the images from different PAC systems, the images from cardiology. Now we're starting to see some of the providers dipping their toe in digital pathology, ophthalmology, dental, wound care. So point of care ultrasound, it just goes on and on.
Monique, I really like that definition because it's more than PACS, right? It's talking
More
about
than PACS.
images moving across the enterprise. It talks about all the elements that large organizations really want. So that to me is what enterprise imaging is. To me, enterprise imaging and having an enterprise imaging strategy is very much tied to having a cloud strategy in healthcare. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So we have been seeing a lot of the applications move to cloud before now. Moving PACS to the cloud has definitely been on the radar for some time, and it is moving in that direction. We are not quite seeing it yet in the VNA, but we're starting to see people look. We're starting to see people figure out how that's going to go. And then next is cardiology. So again, not as many people that have fully adopted, but absolutely talking, discussing. Even pathology. I've had a few organizations say we're looking at what we do in the cloud with pathology. So that is definitely quite a stretch from where we've been. PACS definitely has the most energy right now. And we're seeing in our latest report, it was about thirds. So when we look at cloud, it was about a third of the healthcare organizations that have either signed or migrating or moving or live in the cloud. So about a third right there. About a third that are in this decision-making mode and deciding what does cloud even mean? That's another definition. Is this going to be full-blown cloud? Will there be a hybrid? Will this be disaster recovery? So the definition also there, I had someone tell me last week it was a little cloudy, which I liked. It is a little cloudy, and that's what I really press my providers when I'm talking to them. Define cloud to me. Tell me what you mean when we're talking cloud strategy, because if I don't have an understanding of what they're talking about, we miss the whole mark of where they're trying to go. So just defining and understanding that cloud strategy. And then we see about a third that they know it will come up in the future, but they don't necessarily have a date and they don't have a plan today of what they're going to do, but they're definitely there, it's on the table or there are talks about cloud. The thing that the one of the pieces I find very fascinating, cloud is moving fast. So a year ago, we try to talk to our healthcare providers at least once a year. Some of the more active ones and ones in large decisions we're speaking to more often. But some of those last year in 2024 that told me it would be a couple years out for cloud, they have now signed or they're already migrating data. So not everyone's moving that fast. But one, I guess, myth buster, so to speak, we thought a lot more people would be live in full cloud today, and it's still in that transition. So organizations that feel like they're behind, you're not behind. A lot of people are still looking and putting that strategy together. And another question that's been coming up that ties right back to enterprise imaging, and we don't have a lot of data on it because it's still a new topic. But what do you do if your VNA is partnered with one particular cloud and you have a robust PACS that you're utilizing as your core PACS, and that's tied to another public cloud? So again, what will that look like? What do those fees look like? And those are really important questions and things we're seeing come out right now that will tie right back into our future cloud reports as well as enterprise imaging.
So,
Yeah,
Monique,
great
is that
question.
is, well, thank you for saying that. Is that one of the reasons why cloud hasn't taken off as much as people maybe originally anticipated? Is because of what I call cloud conflict, where your
Love
decision for
that.
PACS is on one, and your VNA vendor might be on different, or were there other reasons why cloud hasn't sort of gotten to where it should
Definitely
be?
other reasons. This one seems to be a newer reason coming up now because originally people were focused on solely on PACS. Not that all the others were not definitely thought of, but it was early with early PACS was going forward. We hear a lot of reasons. Last year, people were saying, I just want to make sure it's secure. I do not hear security as much in 2025. It feels like people have moved beyond that. Now, that does not mean security is not a concern. Security is a huge concern, but it's a concern any which way you slice it. We had last year in the spring, we had our Enterprise Imaging Summit and a security panel talking about cloud. And there was a particular person, I love what they said. And this person has sat both on provider board, on the provider side, as well as the vendor partner side. And he said, it is not if there's going to be something happening with security in general, it's when. And all of us have to be prepared. Everyone needs to be working together and always bringing security forward thinking. But a lot of people now are saying, okay, we definitely know we have a responsibility with security, but we really like having that big brother, so to speak. We really like having that organization that is constantly watching security, watching our back, and is really taking a frontline approach to security. Again, not that hospital organizations are not, they always think about security, but there are a lot more entry points. And then you look at all the equipment and the hardware. So that has definitely eased a bit. Cost still comes up that people are unsure. Now, one thing I will say that comes back to this current situation with PACS and VNA possibly being on different platforms or even in the same platform, what does that look like when you're pulling studies up and down from the cloud? And people say, what about the priors? What about this? There's all sorts of examples that get thrown our way. And then also just knowing and understanding the speed and the bandwidth. And that's why we're hearing a lot of people talk about hybrid. They don't want to be fully down if there's a network issue. So most providers, when they tell me they're concerned about the bandwidth is more of a concern or the reliability. It's not the reliability of their cloud partner. It's all the different situations that go into that, where they already know they've had PACS, 20 years. So everyone's really familiar and knows that inside and out. So it'll be really fun to watch that.
Well, I got to get to the report. I mean, I found the report kind of fascinating. And what I'm referring to is the KLAS Enterprise Imaging 2025 report, and we'll put a link down in the description below for people.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, so in that report, one of the interesting findings that came out of it for me was that almost a quarter of like for some vendors, almost a quarter of the people were thinking about moving off of their system. Like if when you did that poll of providers, almost a quarter of them said, "I'm moving off of the current system I have."
Yeah,
And it wasn't just one vendor. There was a few that fell into this category. And given what you just said about like how difficult it is to move
it's
around, right?
so
That's one of the
difficult.
fears that people have. Like moving images is not easy, right? Those are massive files, massive repositories. Why are so many providers planning to leave their vendor?
Changing, yeah, such a great question. Such a great question. Um, we look at and measure so many different segments in healthcare IT. Again, imaging being the very best one, of course. My colleagues love when I say that. But what's so interesting and fascinating, imaging right now is right up there with everything we measure on the replacement side, on the replacement market. We really see a high replacement market right now. And just like you mentioned, that is quite a few. So there's a few reasons for that. There are a lot of legacy systems out there. So a lot of those individuals that are looking at replacing, they're definitely bringing in their current vendor. So they're also saying, okay, I'm on a legacy platform. I will look at my current vendor, but I'm also going to go out there and dip my toe in the water. Cloud has really pressed that. Enterprise imaging has really pressed that. And one PACS that may be doing really well for that market now, when you scale it, or if you have a lot of people that are reading remotely, that's a whole new change. All of a sudden, that PACS that was doing well 5 years ago, if that PACS vendor has not stayed up to speed, it's now old technology, so to speak. So that's one of the reasons. And then again, back to cloud, if you are looking at making that jump, even I talk to people that are happy with their vendors, but their vendor is not where they need to be with cloud. And so now this provider has waited a year or two and they're saying, how long do we keep waiting if my current vendor is not up to speed on cloud? And we haven't even talked about the viewing. We did high level talk about VNA. If they do not have a universal viewer, and that's another, we could have a whole podcast on universal viewers and the definition. But if they're not able to view multiple ologies and utilize that viewer across the, again, enterprise, then some people look at that. Do I need a neutral, another universal viewer? So that is also really press some of these replacements. AI plays into this. We don't go deep in the enterprise imaging report as far as AI. We have a separate report talking about, generally speaking, AI, another really early market, but it goes hand in hand. It is right under the umbrella of enterprise imaging. And a lot of these people are telling us, how is my PACS vendor? How is my core enterprise imaging vendor going to work with and deal with AI? Most of these providers are not expecting their vendor to have the AI, have the algorithms, but they are expecting help with some of the governance, the viewing, and making sure it goes right with the workflow. No one wants to go in and out of workflow with any of their tools to go look at AI or deal with AI and then come back to it. All of a sudden, it takes away those time savings.
I like what you clarified there, that even though someone might be considering replacing, it's not that they are made up their mind to move away. They're asking their current incumbent vendor to come and showcase the
A lot
latest.
of times, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now, some of those are going to move away because the legacy PACS vendors, in some cases, they have not advanced. In not all cases, there are definitely some they will stay with those current vendors. But it is technology innovation is really important right now. The shortages, the budgeting, the current climate is definitely a tricky climate. And again, I think 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we're like, oh, this market's so hard. I really, and again, my 20 years plus looking at this market and working in oncology and imaging, we just have not seen times like today. It is every tiny dollar matters. It really matters. So it's really important to make the right decisions. And partnering, I cannot say that strong enough. The partnership with the vendors, it's just before you would see people jump in and then jump out. It's you're really married. We've had a person mention that at one of our summits. You are married to these vendor partners. It really does need to work, and you are in it for the long haul. And we didn't even dive deep into cardiology, but we're really seeing a lot of changes with cardiology and providers. Epic is starting to move, or has been for a long time, but now it's getting stronger, doing a lot of that workflow in cardiology, some of that structured reporting piece. So they're taking a little edge off of that market, which means the vendors storing it really need to press even harder to have that innovation and bring that back into enterprise imaging, both storage and viewing.
So, Monique, I mentioned what surprised me out of the report. Was there something that surprised you in putting together the report?
Gosh, there's always so many surprises, and so many things that I think will shake out and then they don't. This is the data directly from the providers. It's so fun to have these interviews. I really thought we would be further along in cloud specific to PACS. Not a lot of people in our enterprise imaging report. Now, we don't go deep on PACS because we have a specific report that goes deep, but cloud was surprising because we've been talking about it for so long. It's definitely moving a lot faster than we have seen, and we're seeing a lot of people sign now. We're even talking about our cloud category and how do we look at that differently, and how do we pull that data out when we get into our deep in our enterprise imaging report. But I really thought we would be further along with cloud. I thought we would be a lot further along with AI. Again, we don't touch a lot on it this report because we don't have a lot of those data points. But early on, our scope and our vision, we thought we would talk about that a lot more. We just did not have as much to talk about. For the providers, and I hear this all the time, I'll talk to healthcare providers, which I love, by the way. So thank you for everyone that participates. And you hear they feel like they're farther behind, or they feel like the market. And really, what they're doing is amazing. You all are doing such an amazing job with what you have. And the market has just been slower to adopt. So I hear people say, we're doing this, and this, but I think we're behind. And I'm going, holy moly, this is amazing. You're far ahead. So that was surprising. Consolidation, we've heard a lot of people talk about consolidating with vendors, but as more and more healthcare systems acquire each other, we talked about this a bit earlier, it does seem to be that people are getting more PAC systems, and even a couple of orgs that have multiple VNAs, at least two, because of that consolidation, because of them consolidating. So now they're needing to consolidate or figure out, do we just keep running the multiple PACs? But that was a few of my surprises.
The report mentions a lot of vendors, AGFA, Fujifilm, GE, Highland, Visage, Merge by Meritive, all these people, Sectra, Philips. I forget all the rest
See?
of them. Um, is there one that you're going to be keeping your eye on when RSNA rolls around? Is there one of these companies that aren't on the, it's like I call it the bubbling under. Is there a couple of vendors you could give us as an example of ones that are these smaller, more nimble,
Gosh, there's so many that sounds like I'm just holding secrets, but there really are so many. And it depends on what's important. What is important to the healthcare provider? What's important to them? One company I did just mention in my LinkedIn is, and you can go look at it, Pocket Health, and what they're doing with patients. This goes, again, a very personal story that a patient, and I've not tried it. So full disclosure, and I'm not IT savvy, so I'm not going to do them any justice. But a patient can take the app and look at their own report from the radiologist, and it helps them in more simple terms. That's the kind of innovation that gets me really excited.
What advice do you have for vendors in this area? I mean, you have a unique perspective, you have a unique view. What advice would you give to me if I was working at one of these enterprise imaging vendors of how to stay a little bit ahead of the market?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I literally tell this to every single vendor I work with. Find out what problem your customers, our healthcare leaders, our healthcare providers are trying to solve. It sounds so simple, but often that's my question. I start off when I have all of my conversations, all of my research. I literally ask that simple question. What problem are you trying to solve? So I'm going to push on my vendor colleagues as well as my provider colleagues when they're working in different departments. Just asking and listening, what problem are you trying to solve? And the moment you understand that, you can get on the same page. This goes for the providers. If departments are saying different things, it helps you realign, bring people back in and focus. Same with vendors. Many of the vendors in this report, it's not just about, you say enterprise imaging, that sounds easy. It's not easy. You're talking about all the different ologies, the different PACs, VNA, image exchange. I mean, speech, there's so many pieces that go into this, but understanding that simple question and aligning people, it really brings back that sense of community, working together, and then solving those problems.
Monique, where can people go to download this report and learn more about KLAS?
Awesome. Thank you. I feel like you're giving me just like a little soapbox here. So this is the really good news. KLAS Research, all of our data, all of our reports and information, it is complementary to providers. You can go to classresearch.com, click on as a provider, download the report. You can definitely connect with us on the research side
Well, Monique,
and
thank
our
you so
patient
much for
care.
being on the program. You've shared such great information. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you covering imaging. Really appreciate it.
Wow, what an entertaining conversation with Monique. It's very easy to tell that she is passionate about imaging. What was interesting to me was to hear how she believes we are in a very unique time in the imaging world. Providers are looking to move off legacy PACs, VNA, and other platforms and are open to switching vendors. That means there's a lot of opportunity out there for both incumbents as well as upstarts. And the key to winning, according to Monique, is actually listening to customers. And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, please mash that like button and subscribe so that you can be notified when we have more great interviews like this one. I'm Colin Hung. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.